I never thought I'd be the kind of mother who'd go to war with her own neighborhood, but life has a way of pushing you into battles you never asked for. My name is Rebecca Lawson, and for the past 8 years, I've lived in the pristine, manicured community of Willowbrook Estates with my daughter, Emma. She's 17 now, beautiful in ways that transcend the physical, with eyes that hold more wisdom than most adults I know. Emma has cerebral palsy. She uses a wheelchair, and while her body doesn't always cooperate with her brilliant mind, she's never let that define her limitations. If anything, watching her navigate this world has taught me what real strength looks like. Willowbrook Estates isn't just any neighborhood. It's one of those places where every lawn is measured to regulation height. It's where holiday decorations require approval forms, and where the Homeowners Association rules are thicker than most novels. When we first moved here, I thought the structure would be good for us. Safety, community, predictability. I was a single mother trying to create stability after Emma's father walked out when she was 3, unable to handle what he called the burden of raising a special needs child. I've spent 14 years proving that Emma is anything but a burden. She's my entire world. The problem started 6 months ago when Veronica Hastings became the new HOA president. Veronica is the kind of woman who wears designer athleisure to check her mailbox and drives a white Range Rover that's never seen a speck of dirt. She moved into the neighborhood only 2 years ago, but somehow managed to position herself as the guardian of Willowbrook's standards and values. From the moment she took office, she made it her personal mission to enforce every obscure rule in the HOA handbook with religious fervor. Mrs. Chen got cited for her garden gnome being 2 inches too tall. The Rodriguez family received a violation notice because their daughter's birthday balloons stayed up for 3 days instead of the allowed 24 hours, but Veronica saved her special attention for us. It began with small things. A notice about Emma's wheelchair ramp being visually disruptive to the neighborhood aesthetic. A complaint that the accessible van I'd saved for 3 years to buy was parked incorrectly in our own driveway. Then came the citations about Emma's medical equipment being visible through our front windows. Each notice was signed with Veronica's flourishing signature, each one more ridiculous than the last. I responded to every single one with patience I didn't feel, explaining Emma's needs, providing medical documentation, citing federal accessibility laws. Veronica would acknowledge my responses with cold, brief emails that always ended the same way. Rules are rules, Mrs. Lawson. No exceptions. The real nightmare began on a Tuesday afternoon in late September. Emma had been having a particularly difficult day. Her muscle spasms were worse than usual, and she'd been in considerable pain despite her medication. I'd taken the day off from my job at the county library to stay home with her. Around 2 in the afternoon, Emma asked if she could sit outside on our front porch. It was one of those perfect autumn days, crisp and golden, and I knew the fresh air might help her relax. I positioned her wheelchair in the shade, brought out her tablet so she could work on the digital art project she'd been excited about, and set up her communication device within easy reach. Emma is largely nonverbal, but her communication device allows her to express herself fully. I made sure she had everything she needed, then went inside to prepare her afternoon medications, leaving the front door open so I could hear her if she needed me. I was measuring out her prescriptions when I heard voices outside. Loud voices. My heart immediately started racing because I recognized that sharp, imperious tone. Veronica Hastings. I rushed to the door and what I saw made my blood run cold. Veronica was standing at the bottom of our porch steps, her phone raised, taking photographs of Emma. My daughter's face showed clear distress. Her hands were trembling the way they do when she's anxious, and she was frantically trying to use her communication device. "What are you doing?" I demanded, pushing through the screen door. Veronica didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. She lowered her phone slowly, deliberately, as if she had every right to photograph my child without permission. "Documenting another violation, Mrs. Lawson. Your daughter's medical equipment is creating an unsightly display visible from the street. This is the 3rd warning you've received about maintaining neighborhood standards." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She's sitting on our own porch, on our private property. Veronica's smile was thin and cold. "Your front porch is visible to the entire street, which makes it subject to HOA aesthetic guidelines. That equipment," she gestured dismissively at Emma's wheelchair and communication device, "is a violation of Section 7, Paragraph 3 of the Community Standards Handbook. You have 48 hours to remedy the situation or face fines." I felt something crack open inside me. Every maternal instinct, every protective urge I'd ever felt came roaring to the surface. "You're telling me my disabled daughter can't sit on her own front porch?" Veronica's expression hardened. "I'm telling you that rules apply to everyone, Mrs. Lawson. I don't make exceptions for sob stories. If you can't maintain the standards of this community, perhaps you should consider living somewhere more appropriate for your situation." That's when I knew this woman wasn't just enforcing rules. She was targeting us, targeting Emma. And the worst part? I had no idea how much worse it was about to get. The 48-hour deadline Veronica gave me came and went. I didn't comply because I legally didn't have to. I'd consulted with a disability rights attorney who confirmed what I already knew. The Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act protected Emma's right to use our property, including our front porch, with her necessary medical equipment and mobility devices. I sent Veronica a certified letter explaining this, citing the specific federal statutes and including documentation from Emma's medical team. I thought that would be the end of it. I was so naive. 3 days after my deadline passed, I was at work when my phone rang. It was Emma's school. My daughter had been participating in an online class from home that day because she'd had a medical appointment that morning. The school counselor's voice was shaking. "Mrs. Lawson, you need to come home immediately. The police are at your house and Emma is extremely distressed." A neighbor called claiming there was a dangerous situation. My entire world tilted. I grabbed my keys and ran, not even bothering to clock out or explain to my supervisor. The 15-minute drive home took an eternity. Every terrible possibility raced through my mind. When I turned onto Maple Drive, I saw 3 police cars parked in front of my house, their lights flashing, drawing every neighbor out of their homes. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely park. I ran toward my house and found Emma on the front porch, surrounded by 2 police officers. My 17-year-old daughter was sobbing, her whole body racked with the kind of distress that could trigger a seizure. Her communication device had fallen from her wheelchair tray and was lying on the porch floor, out of reach. She couldn't tell anyone what was happening, couldn't explain, couldn't defend herself. And standing at the edge of my property, arms crossed, was Veronica Hastings, watching the entire scene with something that looked disturbingly close to satisfaction. "What the hell is going on?" I shouted, pushing past one of the officers to get to Emma. I immediately began the calming routine her therapist had taught me, running my hands along her arms in the specific pattern that helped her regulate. "Ma'am, we received a call about a vulnerable person in distress," one of the officers explained. He looked young and uncomfortable, like he was beginning to realize this call wasn't what he'd been told. The caller reported that a disabled individual was left unattended and appeared to be in medical distress. "She wasn't unattended," I said, my voice cracking as I continued to comfort Emma. "I was inside the house. She was on our porch for less than 20 minutes, working on a school project. She does this all the time. She's 17 years old. She has her communication device, and I was 15 feet away." The second officer, older with gray at his temples, shifted his weight. The caller was quite insistent. She said she'd witnessed ongoing neglect and that the child was in immediate danger. That's when I turned to look at Veronica. She was still standing there, her face a mask of false concern. Our eyes met, and I saw it clearly. This was calculated. This was revenge for my refusal to comply with her absurd demands. She'd weaponized the police, weaponized people's concern for vulnerable individuals, and turned it against my daughter. "Officer, that woman is Veronica Hastings, the HOA president," I said, my voice steadier now, but filled with a fury I'd never felt before. "For the past 6 months, she's been harassing us with bogus HOA violations because my daughter is disabled. She cited us for Emma's wheelchair ramp, her medical equipment, her accessible van. I have documentation of everything. This call wasn't about concern for Emma's welfare. This was retaliation." Veronica's mask slipped for just a moment, a flash of anger crossing her face. "I called because I was genuinely concerned. And any reasonable person would be worried seeing a severely disabled child left alone outside. I was being a good neighbor, a responsible community member." The older officer looked between us, and I could see him reassessing the situation. "Ma'am," he said to me gently, "does your daughter require constant supervision?" "No, she doesn't. Emma has cerebral palsy, which affects her mobility and speech, but she's cognitively typical. She's a junior in high school with a 3.8 GPA. She's taking AP classes. She has her communication device, her phone, and I was in the house with the door open. What Veronica reported as medical distress was probably Emma working on her tablet, which she does by using head movements because her fine motor control is limited. To someone who knows nothing about disability, it might look concerning. But if Veronica had actually been worried, she would have knocked on my door or asked Emma if she needed help. Instead, she called 911 and reported neglect. I pulled out my phone and showed the officers the string of emails and certified letters, the documentation of Veronica's harassment campaign. I showed them the attorney's letter citing federal disability laws. I showed them everything. The younger officer looked at Veronica with barely concealed disgust. "Ma'am, making a false report is a serious matter." Veronica's face flushed red. "It wasn't false. I genuinely believed. You genuinely believed that calling the police and traumatizing a disabled teenager would somehow force us out of this neighborhood," I interrupted, my voice rising. You've made our lives hell for 6 months because you can't stand looking at my daughter's wheelchair, because she doesn't fit your perfect aesthetic, because we make you uncomfortable." Emma's hand suddenly grasped mine, and I looked down. She'd managed to reach her communication device, and the synthesized voice spoke clearly. "She took pictures of me without asking. Scared me." The older officer's expression hardened. He turned to Veronica. "Did you photograph this minor without parental consent?" The color drained from Veronica's face. She'd made her biggest mistake, and now there was no taking it back. I was documenting a violation." The officer shook his head slowly. "We're going to need you to come down to the station to make a formal statement. Mrs. Lawson, do you want to press charges?" I looked at this woman who had terrorized my daughter, who had turned our home into a battleground, who had just weaponized the police against a disabled child, and I realized something important. This wasn't just about Emma and me anymore. This was about every family with a disabled member who'd ever been made to feel unwelcome in their own community. This was about standing up to bullies who hide behind rules and regulations to disguise their discrimination. I held my daughter close, felt her breathing finally start to calm, and looked directly at Veronica Hastings. "Yes, officer, I absolutely want to press charges, and that's just the beginning."